Dinar shift. The financial landscape of Iraq is currently the subject of intense global scrutiny, marked by a development that can only be described as truly historic. For 2 long decades, the matter of the official exchange rate remained devoid of public discourse within one of Iraq's most authoritative institutions. Now that silence has been unequivocally shattered. The Iraqi Gazette, the nation's official government record, the final word on laws, regulations, and state decisions, has, for the first time in over 20 years, openly and explicitly addressed the exchange rate. This is not a subtle reference or a minor mention. It is a clear, deliberate action by a foundational governmental body, signaling a profound and systematic shift in national economic policy, transparency, and communication. This singular acknowledgement from the Gazette carries a weight and significance that reverberates across international financial circles and confirms a deep internal momentum toward change. The gravity of this unprecedented communication from the Gazette cannot be overstated. When a publication of this institutional stature breaks a 20-year policy of complete silence on a topic as central as the national currency's value, it serves as a powerful, undeniable confirmation of ongoing high-level movement. Sources indicate that the Iraqi Gazette recently published formal information that points to the Central Bank of Iraq, CBI, actively undertaking a comprehensive review of the current economic conditions and formally engaging in discussions regarding significant adjustments to the exchange rate framework. This disclosure moves the entire discussion out of the realm of speculation and into the verifiable domain of official government action. This is the difference between rumor whispered in the marketplace and concrete authoritative documentation issued by the state's most formal recording body. What makes this development so extraordinary is its official origin and the context of the CBI's acknowledged review. This is not the result of politically motivated leaks, anonymous reports, or market gossip intended to sway public sentiment. It is an official statement, straight from the institution responsible for documenting every law and decisive regulation in the Republic of Iraq. The fact that the Gazette, a publication historically mute on the exchange rate, is now openly discussing the CBI's assessment of the economy and its contemplation of policy changes is a direct signal. It demonstrates that the long-standing economic status quo is definitively under formal review, and that the discussion surrounding the dinar's valuation has officially transitioned into a structured, public-facing governmental process. The historical context further amplifies the current moment's significance. For 2 decades, the exchange rate was effectively a black hole of silence within the official record, entirely absent from the Gazette's pages. In a nation where the exchange rate is a critical factor influencing everything from daily commerce and trade balances to salaries and the cost of goods, this public silence was part of a deeply opaque financial system. That system has now been decisively fractured. Not only has the Gazette spoken, but it explicitly framed the conversation within the context of an ongoing economic conditions review, promising forthcoming updates. This dramatic shift toward transparency is an undeniable sign of impending monetary reform and adds a weighty, official layer to the broader narrative of change. Moreover, the involvement of the Gazette aligns perfectly with the CBI's wider, coordinated public outreach and financial literacy initiative, known as Astrolabe. This initiative is a systematic monetary education campaign meticulously designed to prepare the Iraqi citizenry for the structural economic reforms that are underway. Once the authoritative voice of the Gazette is integrated into the communication pipeline for monetary reform, the importance of the entire process is elevated. The Gazette is known for its neutrality and authority, making it an ideal politically insulated channel for the central bank to use as it guides the nation toward comprehensive reform. Its formal documentation confirms the legitimate monetary authorities are driving the process. When the most official, politically independent platform in Iraq begins explaining the fundamental mechanics of currency and formally addressing exchange rate considerations, it confirms that a legitimate reform process is not only in motion, but is being driven directly by the highest financial authorities. This level of coordinated public messaging underscores that the CBI is strategically taking control of the national financial narrative. Their actions are designed to manage expectations, build public trust, and systematically prepare the population for the transition, thereby protecting the economy from any potential instability during the implementation of reforms. Institutions do not launch a nationwide systematic education campaign like Astrolabe unless they are certain that a significant financial event is on the near-term horizon. Furthermore, they would absolutely not follow up such a campaign with an unprecedented acknowledgement of exchange rate review in the official Gazette unless the next critical stage of reform was imminent. This calculated move is fundamentally about managing public expectation, strengthening public confidence and steering the entire population toward one unified, official understanding of the currency's trajectory. It represents a deliberate, systematic shift away from the secrecy that once fueled informal markets and toward a transparent, modern financial environment. The very statement that the Central Bank of Iraq is reviewing economic conditions, while seemingly subtle in technical language, carries a thunderous implication within the world of monetary policy. This phrase signals that the CBI is engaged in the final, rigorous stages of economic due diligence. This includes finalizing critical reserve calculations, analyzing non-oil revenue performance, confirming compliance metrics with international standards, and assessing every prerequisite necessary before authorizing any major exchange rate adjustment. In essence, the appearance of this language in the Gazette is a coded message that the central bank is in the final stretch of its preparatory work. For every individual who has followed the dinar's journey, this official documentation in the Gazette provides concrete, irrefutable evidence that internal financial decision-making has transitioned into its final preparatory phase. This move is not casual commentary. It is a clear signpost. The central bank is methodically checking every box required for structural reform. When an institution begins to disclose that it is undertaking a comprehensive review of economic conditions, it tells observers that high-resolution scrutiny of macroeconomic fundamentals is underway, which forms the necessary backbone for responsible monetary stewardship. The geopolitical dimensions of this action are highly relevant. When the Gazette publishes financial signals that deliberately bypass the influence of political factions known for historically attempting to interfere with monetary policy, it signifies a profound reassertion of national financial sovereignty. The central bank is sending a clear, unequivocal message, both domestically and internationally. Iraq's monetary future is the domain of its legal, specialized institutions, not political influencers, shadow markets, or external actors. The goal is to strip the black market of its capacity to manipulate the financial environment. By officially standardizing the exchange rate conversation within a public, transparent governmental forum, the CBI is effectively neutralizing the influence of informal markets and placing monetary policy firmly back under the control of the state. This is a dual victory, both political and economic, designed to reinforce long-term stability and to bolster the credibility of the dinar's trajectory. For those who have tracked this process over the long term, the Gazette's announcement serves as a high-level validation, moving the underlying national narrative from a speculative if to a definite when. One of the persistent challenges over the years has been the lack of official commentary, which allowed skepticism and informal narratives to thrive. That structural barrier has now been dismantled. The official government has spoken, the CBI has clearly signaled its actions, and the Gazette has provided the official documentation. There now exists a public, citable, and analyzable reference point straight from the core of the state's financial governance structure. This foundation of transparency is critical for building enduring market trust and confidence, a requirement for any successful monetary transition. While no specific event can ever be predicted with absolute certainty, the confluence of concurrent signals is remarkable. The Gazette's unprecedented acknowledgement of the exchange rate review, the ongoing national monetary education campaign, the comprehensive finalization of budgets, and sustained compliance upgrades all fit neatly within a structured preparation timeline. The central bank would not commit to initiating a public education wave or break a 2-decade-long silence unless the full activation phase of its policy adjustments was decisively approaching. Preparation is the clearest signal of intent. The preparatory steps indicate that the runway is cleared, all operational checks are complete, and the system is ready for the transition. The financial apparatus of the nation is now in the final countdown stage, and the Gazette announcement is one of the most authoritative signs yet of the imminence of the next phase. The recent evolution toward heightened institutional transparency marks a significant turning point in how modern financial authorities choose to communicate with their citizens and manage the flow of vital information. For years, central banks globally have navigated the difficult balance between operational confidentiality and the public need for reassurance, often favoring silence to shield sensitive procedures. When a central bank makes a strategic decision to shift toward broad, coordinated public messaging, especially through its official state-backed channels, it reveals a strategic intent to bring the public directly into the informational loop. This proactive approach is essential for reducing uncertainty, limiting market speculation, and reinforcing the institutional narrative for stability. When an institution expands its educational campaigns, enhances public financial literacy, or formally uses official publications to detail ongoing reforms, it is engaging in more than a mere public relations exercise. It is actively asserting control over the psychological dimension of economic stability. Such moves are designed to preempt the spread of misinformation, systematically weaken informal markets that rely on ambiguity, and suppress any destabilizing rumors that naturally flourish in the absence of clear communication. This strategic shift indicates that the institution seeks a population that is not only aware of policy changes, but is also mentally prepared for their execution. Transparency, in this critical context, is not a passive virtue. It is an active, carefully engineered tool of modern economic governance, a sophisticated mechanism for strengthening national financial resilience and managing expectations. When the central bank publicly announces that it is undertaking a comprehensive review of economic conditions, it is using language that, while technical, signifies a high-resolution, meticulous assessment of every macroeconomic fundamental. This is far from routine. These specialized reviews typically encompass rigorous reserve adequacy tests, detailed liquidity flow analyses, checks for fiscal monetary alignment, sector-by-sector performance measurements, and system-wide compliance verification across the entire banking ecosystem. These tasks are the necessary backbone of responsible monetary stewardship. They guarantee that the institution fully understands every variable that could potentially influence a major decision, particularly in an environment where structural reform and modernization are the explicit goals. Acknowledging these activities publicly reflects an institution that is confident enough in its methodologies to disclose its internal processes without risking market destabilization. It sends a message to both domestic and international observers that major decisions will be grounded in measurable data, not influenced by political expediency or transient whims. This level of transparency is vital for cultivating an informed citizenry, reinforcing the legitimacy of the institution, and building the foundation of trust that will be absolutely essential for managing future policy adjustments. The assertion of independence from political interference is one of the most powerful signals a central bank can convey. When official publications begin communicating policy rationale directly to the public, effectively bypassing partisan structures, influential interest groups, or informal intermediaries, it represents a vital reclamation of sovereign authority. This is a deliberate, structural reinforcement of the core principle that monetary stability must reside in the hands of specialized institutions, insulated from short-term political agendas and external pressures. By centralizing financial communication with informal, legally recognized state outlets, the central bank effectively diminishes the destabilizing influence of shadow markets and rumor networks that thrive on uncertainty. It communicates both domestically and internationally that governance structures are maturing, oversight mechanisms are strengthening, and separation between policy design and political pressure is decisively widening. These developments are critical for shaping the confidence of foreign investors and establishing firm expectations for robust regulatory enforcement. A transparent, politically independent central bank is more than a bureaucratic ideal. It is a cornerstone of national economic stability and a formidable indicator of a nation's long-term developmental trajectory. While timelines in economic reform are inherently complex, they serve a crucial psychological and organizational function. When governments release detailed multi-year development plans, compliance roadmaps, or structural modernization schedules, they are constructing an institutional architecture that guides expectations and aligns priorities across all sectors. These official timelines outline the logical, necessary progression of reforms required for achieving sustainable long-term stability. The alignment of finalized budgets, regulatory upgrades, technological transitions, and targeted educational initiatives strongly suggests that an economy is moving into a decisive stage, one characterized by integration, structural recalibration, and deep modernization. Policymakers focus on these timelines as the critical scaffolding that supports lasting, sustainable reform. When multiple authoritative institutional signals converge, increased transparency, strengthened international compliance, enhanced public outreach, and synchronized legal frameworks, it indicates that the system is definitively transitioning from the planning phase to the execution phase. This is a signal of the culmination of years of foundational groundwork. The focus, therefore, shifts away from merely predicting a specific date and onto recognizing that this coordinated multi-institutional reform itself is the most powerful indicator of national economic momentum. True sovereign monetary reform is never a sudden, isolated event. It requires meticulously calibrated alignment across regulatory systems, public education infrastructure, digital technology integration, legal harmonization, and clear articulation of government intent. When all these pieces move together, as they are now, it signals that the nation is not improvising but is executing a carefully engineered, multifaceted plan designed to elevate transparency, strengthen oversight, and drastically reduce systemic vulnerabilities across the financial sector. The inclusion of the Gazette in this strategic ecosystem is significant, not because it provides speculative hints, but because it formally confirms that the state is actively unifying its communication channels. This is precisely how major monetary transitions are managed in sovereign nations, not through abrupt single announcements but through the gradual, consistent tightening of institutional coordination. What observers are now witnessing is the emergence of a fully integrated policy environment where reforms are communicated deliberately, consistently, and with increasing clarity. The synchronization of all state communications is, in and of itself, the signal. A nation committed to modernizing its financial architecture must first modernize the systems that explain, justify, and legitimize that architecture. Iraq's current posture indicates a deep understanding of this requirement. Therefore, the coordinated alignment of its most powerful institutions carries enormous strategic weight. The Gazette, as the formal repository of state decisions and the legal equivalent of other nations' highest registers, speaks with profound legal and procedural authority. Its reference to exchange rate considerations reflects genuine governmental engagement and official acknowledgement that macroeconomic conditions are being examined through a structured, lawful process. By publicly noting the CBI's review of economic indicators and the consideration of policy tools, the Gazette reinforces the legitimacy of institutional processes and systematically removes the space in which informal markets can manipulate uncertainty to their advantage. This level of state-backed transparency is a direct challenge to the shadow economy. The real and enduring significance of the Gazette's involvement is its validation of proper, rule-based procedure and its reinforcement of the institutional framework underlying Iraq's monetary governance. Unified messaging across state institutions, whether in regulatory reforms, compliance reporting, anti-corruption mechanisms, or public communications, is one of the strongest indicators that Iraq's financial governance is reaching maturity. This is what institutional coherence looks like in nations undergoing profound modernization. The message is not that a specific monetary change is pending, but that the responsible institutions are finally aligned and mature enough to manage such changes responsibly whenever they may be implemented. This unmistakable direction shows that Iraq's financial governance is consolidating around a unified, modern framework. The Gazette's renewed engagement is not a predictor of a date, but a fundamental confirmation of a process that has moved into its public phase. For years, much of the essential economic work has been conducted behind the scenes, in technical committees, regulatory workshops, and internal modernization programs. When reforms reach the point where the official record begins discussing them openly, it is the clear signal that the preparatory groundwork is complete, and the public phase of reform has commenced. This transition from behind-the-scenes work to transparent national dialogue is a moment of deep institutional confidence. The state is now secure enough in its progress to speak openly about ongoing evaluations, future possibilities, and its long-term intentions. The convergence of public education, legal updates, banking reforms, and official communication does not point to a specific calendar date. It points to a country preparing its population for a sustained period of deep economic modernization. The true milestone is the transparency itself, and through this transparency, Iraq signals it is entering one of the most structurally transformative periods in its modern financial history. The phrase that the Central Bank of Iraq is reviewing economic conditions and discussing potential adjustments to the exchange rate is deliberate, meaningful, and indicative of the highest level of official movement. It functions as a warning shot aimed directly at black market actors, reinforcing that the official institutions are taking control of the currency's value trajectory. This official transparency suffocates the shadow economy and unequivocally strengthens the legitimacy of the dinar as a sovereign national currency. The synchronized, unified messaging across all institutions is the most powerful confirmation that this monetary reform is moving into its final stages of public preparation and execution. There is no more fragmented or contradictory communication. The entire official framework is aligned, and the direction is unmistakable. The Iraqi Gazette breaking its two-decade silence is a monumental event. It is the clearest, most authoritative signal that the central bank has entered the final, public phase of comprehensive monetary reform. This explicit, documented discussion of exchange rate adjustments is the last major official indicator that was needed to confirm the trajectory. Every piece of the puzzle, public education, legal alignment, financial reforms, and official governmental communications, is now converging at the same time. The structural path to the next economic phase is visible, the necessary institutional pieces are assembled, and the Gazette has just provided the final, authoritative evidence confirming the structural transformation underway in the modern Iraqi dinar's history.